Hey, everybody. I wanted to do two things here. One was kind of to go into what happened uh, today a little bit in a way that I can. This will be released later on. Correct a few things, if nothing else, this entire YouTube channel and what it is I'm doing, wherever I'm creating videos and audio and whatever it is, content in general, if that's what you want to call it. It's about me and it's meant to be honest and meant to be realistic, I suppose. And it's just something that I'm doing because I don't know. What do I really need to explain all of it? I guess to sum it up, it's just simply that I've I've already, like, since becoming an adult at the very least, and at the last like 20 something years of consciousness and making memories, I forget so much, and I want to be able to relive them later on. And I also think that it's interesting having documentation of not the highlights of everyone's life, the day-to-day stuff. And the day-to-day thing that I did today was jury duty, and I talked about it leading up to it and my misconceptions of it. And so that's where I'm getting into the reality, is that I didn't understand some things, and I want to talk about it, and I want to talk about my experiences of what I can talk about at this point. I think this will be two parts because under oath, legally, not supposed to talk about any of the details of the trial until the trial is over. So I'll probably record a part two once it's over. I don't know how long that'll be. We'll see. I can tell you that I'd never done jury duty before. And like, they even address in the video that they show you at the beginning, and they address multiple times when they're talking to you, and the judge was very nice about it and explained it as well. No one really wants to do jury duty. It's mostly seen as an inconvenience, and I agree. I did not want to go do that. And I don't feel all that different now, but I have a greater understanding, and I don't know what's wrong with me that I seem to be able to follow instructions and be a decent human being where so many people other can't. Like, what is wrong with you? Okay, I don't want to complain too much. I don't want to do too much of the negative, but there was some aspects to it. Let me take you through it. I report in at the time I'm supposed to be there. There's a line forming out front, very obvious to know where to go, super easy to do that. I have to go through security, as I talked about leading up to it from the camping trip. I didn't know, they just said, it was very vague. It said, bring a book or something to entertain yourself. That was pretty much it. You would have to go through security similar to airport security, which I've never been through, but I at least have an understanding of, and, my partner has been through. So that wasn't that bad. Stand in line, you go through the whole process. They're telling you when you're up there, so it's not like I was holding up the line or anything. Metal water bottles were allowed. That was something that I wasn't sure about because other counties in this area, they don't allow that specifically. You're only allowed to bring in a plastic bottle, which is dumb. That was fine. They just need you to take it. It doesn't go through the metal detector, obviously, so you set it to the side, and then when you go through and you get cleared there, they go, okay, take the cap off. Let me peer in, make sure that it's just water, basically, or you're not bringing in it, or that it's not liquor, that it's not any explosive devices hidden in a metal water bottle, that it's not anything like that, whatever it is. No problems. I had to take my belt off. I've lost so much weight that my pants were mostly falling down, so that was a little embarrassing, but I just tried not to think about it. I just went, well, this is happening to everybody. Not everybody's pants are falling down. I just have to kind of hold them up while I'm also doing that stuff. But I had no problems with security, essentially. I'd take off all of your, any devices, anything. You put them in a little tray. It goes through the conveyor belt. Same thing with the backpack. They scan it through there. They didn't even say anything, didn't question anything. I get through no problem. I'm going to read. Got to play some Monster Hunter on my handheld device. Not a problem at all. Filter you down. You just go give them the little questionnaire that fills out, which has information such as name, age, date of birth, your occupation. That's, I think, a critical thing because I think all of that, I don't know the full side of it. I have never been through this process before. I don't know anything about the legal system besides what I've seen and absorbed, but I'm fascinated by just about everything. So I do try to learn stuff like this. And what I do know is what a courtroom is like virtually, because there's plenty of that, and I got real into watching that over the last few years. That's fascinating to me because it's all realistic stuff. You can go watch court live, like legally, anyone can just go sit in a courtroom, as far as I understand it, depending on the case. Not everything's open to the public, but for the most part, you could just go sit in a courtroom and watch a trial proceed. I don't know how much of it they would ask you to leave for, if anything, but as a member of the public, you could just go do that. So because that's the case, they'll live stream it as well. That's gotten a very big. That I heard about it, as so many people did, back in 2020, 2021, when everything had to go virtual. And so then it became a bigger thing, and I started watching that stuff, and there's the courts, and I learned a lot from that, from just how it actually happens, because it's not as it's on TV. Obviously, I know that. I know there's a difference between reality and the way that it's depicted in TVs and movies, but I also find that really fascinating too. I mean, a court kind of type show that I watch was Better Call Saul, and he's a lawyer, and so they show some stuff, but it's not that realistic, and that's fine. The actual reality of a full court case, where they're not just cutting between the good bits, is that there's a lot of arguing back and forth in very specific ways and terminology, and they're only allowed to say certain things, they're not allowed to say other things, and that's really interesting. So the jury selection of that process. Anyway, we get into the room, we file us in there. There's over 100 of us in there, all people. And I immediately was like, okay, well, I'm going to read. I'm reading a comic now. I'll pull that out. I start reading, and there's two girls sitting right behind me who are just giggling and laughing and having a grand time, and that's great for them, but that got on my nerves real quick, and I was like, ooh, I don't want to listen to them complain and giggle and have this stuff, and just generally I just put in my earbuds immediately when I'm Monster Hunter. But I only played I did one hunt, and I had some problems because then they came in and watched the video, and I paid attention to the video, whereas other people were not paying attention and not even giving it the time of day. We had a lot of useful information about what the process is going to be like and what you're supposed to do, and that was the first gripe where I was like, oh, this is where people don't care, at all. And that could be a real problem, because think about it from the other side. You are supposed to be selecting a jury to make a determination about something, whether or not a person did it or not. Essentially, most cases, there's a couple different ways that they did it, and they explain that in there of different things. But either way, it's important. And it's 6 minutes. I know, because it's the same video that's on their website that I checked beforehand, and I watched part of it and went, I know they're going to show me the day of. I'm not going to watch it all now. I don't want to be bored when I'm watching it again later. But it's the exact same thing. They just put it on YouTube. But I paid attention, and I watched, and other people did not. Anyway, then they started calling numbers. It was very quick, very efficient. I give it to them. I thought there would be a lot of waiting around and a lot of time where I could read and do things. And no, not really. It was 20, 30 minutes once they got everybody in, and then they did a roll call, and they got numbers, and they started lining people up, and they lined them up in a specific order at first, and then whatever order you really want. And that's the interesting part with there. I can talk about this, I'm pretty sure, because this was the same for there were multiple court cases, multiple things all going on, multiple trials that were set, and so they were trying to pick juries for. There was a whole other half of the building that was going through the same thing. That was completely different. It was a busy place, but they had it well down. It worked. The only problems that I would say came up were the people element of it. And I get it. I felt pretty relaxed because it seemed like they were explaining everything. It was fine. But I also recognized that 10 years ago, I would have been losing my mind with just nerves. And there was a lot of just being in public around other people, expected to do a thing like the DMV, and you're waiting for your number to be called. And then you got to go up and you got to talk to someone. And what if you don't have the right paperwork? And now you've wasted your time. There was that energy of it, but I felt relaxed in the fact of well, they've told me everything. I'm doing everything I need to do. It's cool. And I managed to go through that. So I was not called. 4 groups of numbers being called. I was not part of any of the ones that were called to be in a specific order. And that is because those people had already been pre-selected based off of whatever you filled out on that questionnaire, that they thought they had the best chance of wanting that person on a jury. I figured that out because when they did call through and they got my number as part of it, I was part of the groups that were just whatever order you want, because you were not going up into the box, as they called it, the jury box, to be selected and screened and talked to about things. You were backup in case they didn't. They were calling groups of 25 for each one of those. So that's why there were over 100 people. And they actually called so many that they talked about how their parking was not great and that people were not going to get towed. And thankfully I didn't, but that was a concern. Anyway, we went through that process, they called it in, and they pull in 25 people, and then they start narrow down. Now, I only know what happened in the one that I went into, which all I can say is that there are 3 different kinds of cases that a jury will be selected for, and they number, it's between civil and criminal, and I forget what the middle one was, something like that. They explained it, but it's 3 different kinds, and there's a jury of 3 people, of 6 people, and of 12 people. 12 people handle the biggest stuff, criminal cases. It was a 12-person jury that I was in line for questioning to be part of. That's all I can say about that, I think, at this time. And I was really, okay. It was interesting. We went in there and we were just back up to do that stuff. And I'll say that over the course of, I was there for a total of 6 hours. And we had a lunch break at one point. They were trying to get through as much as possible. Basically, without going into details, it was a process of once you actually got in the room, the case is explained to you. They tell you details about it and immediately start going, if there's anyone who's in the box who can be disqualified, let's start knocking it out. They did not use this terminology, but they went through all the legal reasons why you might be disqualified right for the bat. And if there was anything else to be thinking about these reasons. And then each side got a chance to start questioning people. Raise your hand if this, raise your hand if you feel like this, raise your hand about this. And again, those are all the specifics I don't think I can go into because those are very specific about the case until the trial is complete, which is why I think I'll do a part 2. But I definitely witnessed some people say one thing one way and then come back and say a different thing another way to get excused, I think. And it is what it is. And the way that it went through, there was just to really focus on what I can talk about from just sitting and watching. Fascinating. I paid attention the whole time because that's what you're supposed to do. I almost told on a lady because we were almost done and they could tell it was being wrapped up. But at the same time, I get it. So just sitting next to me, like color commentary the whole time about things, under her breath whispering and being like, oh, that's why they were picked, and boy, that wasn't the right answer. It's like, there's no right or wrong answers. You're supposed to be honest. Whether or not people were being honest, or then they realized that they had a brief bit of honesty later where they had lied before, I don't know. I don't care. That's not really the point. I understand, just as a grown-up, an adult, my responsibility is to sit there, shut up, and listen, and think about how I would respond to those questions, because that's literally what they told you to do. You're not allowed to have your phone. It's supposed to be shut off entirely. This lady was on her phone, but it was right towards the end. And I very seriously thought about, like, I wasn't going to interrupt or anything, but I was going to pull somebody to the side, like the officer, the bailiff, to go, so this is what she's doing and she's not supposed to be doing that. You want to handle that? I don't know what to do in this situation, because you're not supposed to just be, joking around and doing whatever. You're supposed to be paying attention, because here's the thing about being in the backup. You're a backup. If they dismiss someone from the box, which they did plenty, they were calling more numbers. Now, I still think that they were screened, which is why I think I was further down the list. I never got called, obviously. I was dismissed at the end of the day. They had picked their 12, and that was it. And we don't have... But, like, come on. And I understand why they're asking the questions that they're asking, which, again, I can't go into detail, but I can tell you that at one point they're asking the same people the same questions to see how they gauge their responses. And they're very specific questions that relate to the case. That much was immediately obvious. I wasn't questioning that. Other people around me were questioning that, because I could hear whispering around me from people being like, we just answered this. Why are they doing it again? You didn't answer anything, for one thing. You're sitting there just listening, but they're doing it to gauge each person because they need to find the right people. Both sides have an objective. Both sides have a job to do. One is to prove guilty. The other one's to prove innocence. They want to stack the jury with enough people who can fairly deliberate, is essentially the goal. But let's be realistic. They're humans. They want people. They want to win. I have problems with the justice system as it is. I could say that, but I don't want to go into details, and I don't want to give the wrong opinion, the wrong impression of probably what I did the other night when I was just kind of talking and being like, this is a boring thing and I don't really want to do it. And it's not the whole government. I think I said that. That was one of the things that I was like, after I was done recording, I thought about it and was like, that's not really... The government making the policies and the things that I don't necessarily agree with have nothing to do with the legal counsel and representation and the justice system in my local area, who's just trying to do their job and help people out. But if nothing else matters, there is a person who is going through this trial their life will be different one way or the other. Pay attention. Give it a little bit of respect. You could be, if you're sitting here next to me along with that stuff, just be cool, just chill, and just pay attention and do what they asked you. It's not that much. It's not that bad. Yes, I understand. It's not fun. I didn't enjoy it, but I find it fascinating. It kept my interest enough for me to pay attention and understand the goings on, and I didn't start focusing on other things and get bored about that stuff. But if that would, because I could be selected to be up there, and then I'm answering those questions, and would that person, either way, if they're guilty, you're sending someone to jail for possibly a long time. That's going to change their life. If they're innocent, then the other side doesn't feel like they got the fair share of what, I don't know what happened. That's the whole point. And that's really, there's two sides to every argument, and you're not going to hear both sides, the whole thing. Okay. I can't go into details. We can't talk about everything. But just come on. What is wrong with people? It's not that hard. It's really not that difficult. I understand there's something. There was one point where, again, they were going over the same questions. They're asking the same people, and somebody behind me must have gotten fed up with it and just slammed their hand or something. I couldn't see it. All I heard was a bang, and like people jumped. They're looking around, and the police officers got up, and there were two, one in the front and one in the back, and the one in the back went to like talk to the guy, and I could hear him being like, "I'm just so tired of it. They're just asking the same questions over and over. We shouldn't be doing this. We should be." And like I could see him, the officer, then make a motion of like, "Let's take a break," to the judge, who like, they're in the middle of it. Suck it up. We just came back from lunch. You don't like, just get over it. Anyway, patience wearing thin on people. I just don't understand it. I get it. I understand where, like, yes, that wears thin, and I realize that I'm different. I do have quite a long patience. My hobby is literally to go outside and sit silent for hours and hours at a time. Not many people do that. I understand that. But at the same time, it's interesting enough. Just pay attention. It's a basic thing. I would hate that those people who did, like, I'm at least glad that the people who were up in the box didn't seem to want to just be done with this and get out of there, except for the ones who got excused because you could tell that they were. Anyway, can't go into details, can't talk about any of that stuff, but at the very least, I understand the justice system, even though I may have problems with it and I don't think it's the best solution. I don't have anything better. I recognize that I am just a person, I'm just a guy, and I don't have a better solution for it. So I want to make sure that that was clear at the very least. I also understand a lot better of the process. I know that should I be selected again, I'll not view it with quite the same mindset, because I recognize that it's important. I recognize that this is the only way you can do it. And there does have to be random, impartial people to make a decision outside of anything else. And there's a lot more details that I want to go into that we will once the trial's over. I don't know when that'll be up. I hope that it won't be a super long thing. The judge said in most cases like this, it's at least 2 days, to try to give the example for anyone of how long you might be here if you are selected. But I also went into it knowing I had a full day ahead of me. I knew that, like, the judge was very nice about trying to get us out of there, and like, we have a lunch. Does anyone mind? We are supposed to go to lunch right now, but if we could do this for 30 minutes, if we just go a little bit longer for 30 minutes, we might be able to knock it out, and then you don't have to come back. You could just be free for the day at lunch, which did not happen. We had to come back after that because they weren't able to complete it. It got a little more complicated. Makes sense. I totally understand why it was. There is a process. They are following the process. There are sets of rules. There's reasons that they have to do this stuff. Anyway. I think that was it. I went in with one idea in my head of what it was going to be like. It was very different. I thought it was going to be much more of a one-on-one. They were interviewing people one at a time. Not that way at all. You were answering questions on mic in front of everyone. It was a room full of probably 60 people, between the people there for the cases, the people there for the clerks and the, assistants, the judge, the, bailiff, the officers, everybody there, and then like 50 of us between, what was there, and then slowly whittle down through that stuff. It was a very interesting process. I won't take nearly as much stuff next time in my backpack. I won't have a need for it because they are, at least in this county, that's all I can say, pretty on top of it. Pretty on top of getting people through this process and knowing what needs to happen and recognizing that it is, for most people, an inconvenience, and they want to minimize that as much as possible. I appreciate that. Didn't have any problems with what happened yesterday. It's a thing that happens. And what are you going to do? It's interesting. I think it would be very interesting had I been selected. I probably would have a lot of experiences to talk about, but at the same time, I don't really want that decision. I don't really want to have to weigh that stuff, because I am, at the very core, if you might not have noticed over the last few years, if you're doing any of this, kind of lengthy in answers. And that's not what they want when they're talking to you. I thought about that several times with some of the questions that were asked, where I'd be like, well, I'd want to answer it like this, and I'd want to talk about this here to give and several people did that. And I didn't have a problem with that, because I recognize that that's not but that's up to the people in charge to cut them off and let them answer. They are trying to investigate. They're trying to find out what you think so that they know ahead of time. Essentially, if I understand it correctly, they're trying to see if you are going to be impartial or not. And they need to find out if you have certain biases or prejudices, because as much as they are also realistic, that was one thing I didn't expect. They very specifically said in there, we're not trying to get you to check your feelings and emotions at the door. That's impossible. You can't be a blank slate. But we want to make sure that you are not specifically already going into it with a decision made. That's not fair. You have to be fair and not pin me people who are fair. And some people around me were just, I wanted to, whenever they refer to us as the gallery, all I could think of was us being the peanut gallery. That's all I could think at that point because of the idiots that I was around with. And I am impressed that somehow they managed to pick out people who weren't like that. Maybe it was the fact that you were on the stand, you were doing that. Maybe it's just because I couldn't hear them. Maybe they were doing the same kind of thing. I don't know. But anyway, that's what I have to say about that, about part one. It was an interesting process. I do have respect for the people who are doing that. I don't mean to disrespect them in any way. But I think that's also, you get two sides of it. The public opinion is that, oh, I got to go to the DMV. I got to go take care of this insurance form. I got whatever business or government related thing is a chore, is a task that takes you away from what you would rather be doing. Meanwhile, that's those people's jobs and livelihood. And also it can be as serious as, it can be as frivolous as a divorce case with people sorting Beanie Babies. I remember seeing that image. That's a court case that I'm just aware was a real thing that happened, with them like a pile of Beanie Babies on the floor and the two sides picking which ones they wanted. Something like that. Or it can literally be life or death for people. Thankfully, there's no death penalty here, but like life in prison is a very different life, and being sentenced to jail does change, and it does a thing. I've known people who have spent time in jail. I have not, but I also follow the rules. And sometimes you do, and sometimes you can't, and sometimes it leads you down a path, and I understand it. And like, I try to be at least respectful of that, and not try to be dismissive of people who have been through the system or through the judicial system. I suppose with that stuff, I'm at least respectful and understand. And maybe that's the difference between that of someone who's going in there and has nothing. Like, it was not the same two girls ahead of me who were behind me at one point, but I was like, here's a night and day difference. Here's one who cannot stop commentating about one specific topic that I won't mention, and just every time it was mentioned, she had something she had to whisper. And the other one was just dead ahead, being like, I just want to do. And when we were walking out, I did hear, she wasn't talking to me. No one talked to me, thankfully, really. I just was, a general face there amongst the people. But like, she was talking to the other ladies that she was with, and I happened to be, because I was behind them, I was still behind them as they were walking out. And she was saying that it was her first time, and she was so nervous, and she didn't know what to do. And she was taking it very seriously. I was like, okay, that, I understand the nervousness, because that did shine the light on like, hey, I'm not nearly as nervous as I would have been. Maybe that's just with age. Maybe that's because I've been through not something similar like that, but just enough interactions in a business or government type environment that I understand here's how things have to work. Because I did have to go to the DMV. If you remember, I told you over a year ago at this point, I had my license plate stolen. And to fix that, I had to go to the DMV and take time out of work and not get paid and use personal time off in order to pay for that. And it was a huge inconvenience. And yeah, I had every reason to just be upset. And you know what I was? Perfectly pleasant to every person involved, because it's none of their fault. Because I'm not a jerk. Or other words that I'd rather say about those people who had many things to say and were complaining, and I'm looking at them going, you're twice my age, dude. Chill, man. What is good does it do to get upset about this situation? Read a book. Do something different. Play on your phone. I don't care, but stop making these people's lives worse because you're upset. It's not their fault. They're doing the best that they can. Do you think that the person there at the teller spot, whatever, the one that you interact with is the one who's the manager of all this, who sets the rules that are making you upset, that they're understaffed, or that the process takes so long, or that the guy ahead of you took a really long time because it's a really complicated case and they did the best that they could. But like, what are you going to do when it's complicated? It's complicated. You wait your turn. It'll be fine. I don't understand what is wrong with so much of society with that stuff. I just really, it gets under my skin, because I sit there being like, I don't know what to do. I just relax. Just take a breath and relax. It's not as bad as you're making it out to be. Yeah, I had to spend a day there, essentially. I was there for 6 hours. I'd rather spend those 6 hours elsewhere. But you know what? I learned a lot. It was interesting. I don't have to do it at least for a year. Hopefully never again, but we'll see. I at least went into it with the right level of respect and, general nicety in society. We all kind of have to agree to the same rules. That's how it works. But anyway, I don't know. Maybe if it'll be over in a few days, we'll find out. I just had a few minutes here that I wanted to stop and kind of talk about it while it was fresh. And then when the trial is over, I think I can go into a little bit more detail about it. I'll keep an eye on it and see, because I gleaned some things that I thought were interesting, and there will be a part 2. Maybe it'll just come out tomorrow, if by the time I get around to editing this and, the trial's actually over, if it really was only a couple days. Could be longer. Some things can spread out for a really long time. So, anyway. hopefully that cleared up some of the misconceptions that I had before, and just generally talked about my experiences as I went through the process, and just even as a member observing, essentially, which is all I wound up doing. I still thought it was interesting. And yeah. Stay tuned for part 2 at some point. Bye, everybody.